Put it in the private chat. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Black Talk Platform, and I am your host, Dr. Deborah Jenkins, and this is our year-end closeout show, and I have my two frequent guests with me, panelists tonight. Last year, Pastor Davis helped me close out the year. This year, I have the double T's. All we need is to find one more Tony, and we'll have the trio, Tony. But for tonight, we will settle for Pastor Anthony Davis from the Harvest Restoration Ministries in Co-op City section of the Bronx, and Tony Lindsay, filmmaker extraordinaire, who is getting ready to blow up Fox Soul with his wonderful film. Don't let me mess up the title. I've watched the film. It's awesome. But Tony, don't let me mess up the name of your film, and you can definitely promo it. Just want to welcome everyone tonight to the show. Where we're talking about something that I hope that the three of us will be able to explore a little more deeply in 2022, because I believe that critical impact is being had as a result of the Black political elite misrepresenting the needs of the community. And I know that there are so many naysayers. Some would say, how dare she introduce a topic like that? Because we have more elected Black officials than we've ever had. We have more civil rights organizations being listened to than ever has happened in this country. We have so many activists. We have so many more Blacks on major networks and doing media. How dare she? Well, I dare, because if you get behind the faces that you and I are inundated with every day, the very same faces, and then you go into each and every one of our communities and see what's not being taken care of, then you'll understand why I'm doing this show about the impact that the Black elite, and it's not limited to politically elected officials, the negative impact, I'll even say, that their representation or misrepresentation is having on our communities. You hear it often in conversations. People will say, well, look at your communities. You're in, blue states, but the major cities in blue states have the most crime, have the most poverty, and the list goes on and on. And you know what? At a certain point, I believe we have to admit that this is true. And we have to hold not only the elected officials' feet to the fire, but we have to hold those people who are propped up as our leaders. We have to hold their feet to the fire as well, because the Black community is not doing well, point blank, period. And that's what we're here to talk about tonight. So that was my introduction. Let me just go around as a carousel. Pastor Davis, would you like to bring yours as well? And then after him, Tony, would you do the same? I'm going to take myself out of the frame while you all do that for a minute.
Well, thanks for having us. I appreciate it, an opportunity to close out the year with you and to have this important conversation. And I think everything that you have said laid it out very well in terms of, we talk about blue states, and during the backstage, we talked about the fact that where Democrats are in power, the question we have to ask is, well, what are they doing? And we mentioned earlier about the fact that even homelessness, and the fact that in New York City and whether in places in California, Los Angeles, homelessness is exploding. But these are very liberal and democratic, places, and yet this is what's happening. And so if the Democratic Party is supposed to be a progressive party or a liberal party, it's not making any substantial change. And so Black folks are, and one of Tony's criticisms, and I agree, is that we've been so loyal politically to the Democratic Party, and maybe to a fault, because as you said, look at our communities. So we're loyal to something that has not done anything of any substance for, our communities. And so from a political point of view, as we've been talking about for a while on this show, we need to really reassess this and maybe reimagine our politics. And then when it comes to the gatekeepers, the gatekeepers for, our community, whether it's media or the Black intelligentsia, we have to hold their feet to the fire. And as I was musing, as I was thinking about this show before we, coming on, I thought about Black media, that I was sort of used to coming up, whether it was the people like Tony Brown or Gary Bird at WLIB or Gil Noble or the Open Lines on WBLS on Sunday mornings, or at one point where the Amsterdam News had relevance. There was a time where years ago where it felt like Black media actually had something to say and would critique, our political leadership and civil rights leadership within our community. And people were much more authentic. But somewhere along the line, everyone has been co-opted. Everything has become about money and brand, and it's been, civil rights has become monetized. And so, again, we need to hold people's feet to the fire and at some point call people out, and really ask them, are you really about this? And I just think it's the time. We're dealing with this, pandemic, and we're dealing with people really suffering. And it's been a long time. There's no reason why in 2022, as we enter 2022, that we should have the kind of Black suffering that we have in America. It's just, enough is enough. So that's my opening salvo.
All right. Well, I'll just be brief. There's an old saying that says, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And I think as a community, Black people in America have been doing the same thing politically for decades, and we have not seen any real tangible results. So it's time to do something different. And Dr. Jenkins, you mentioned earlier, that some people may say, "Oh, how dare you, to criticize or to say, to hold, I guess, the Black political establishment their feet to the fire." But what I would say is no one is above reproach, and when we develop an attitude that we cannot be criticized, that I think that shows poor leadership, because in order to be a good leader, you have to be open to critique, to criticism, especially when the things that you're advocating or allegedly fighting for are just not coming to fruition. So I'm very eager to get into this conversation. And thank you for having me on the show. Are we? You there, Dr. Jenkins?
Hey, Dr. Jenkins, you still around?
I wonder if she lost signal.
There she goes.
I was saying, I don't know where I am. I don't know. And it's so funny. I was saying to Pastor Davis in the back, on the backstage, when we started last year in May, there were always technical difficulties. And tonight seems to not be an exception. Listen, I appreciate both of you and your opening statements, because I feel so often that I'm the one out there always like, growling at people, and not necessarily directly. I don't disrespect people like that. If I have something with an individual, I will take it offline, because that's how you're to deal with those type of situations. But I think we're in a place as a community where we're dangerously looking at extinction or relegation into a place of poverty for far longer than we've ever known, because of the poor representation that we have. In preparation for our show, the impetus for tonight's show, actually, for those of you who are listening, was an article that I came across in Newsweek, and I shared it with both Tonys, Pastor Davis and Tony Lindsay. It's entitled "A Black Political Elite Serving Corporate Interests is misrepresenting our community. It is an opinion article by Pascal Robert from Newsweek. It says everything that actually we've been saying now for the longest. And so when you talk about the political elite, let's define that in a broader way than just elected officials. We're not talking only about elected officials. We are talking about civil rights organization leaders, and their foot soldiers, their sergeants. We're talking about this activist community that is a good thing, but it also is a double-edged sword, right? We're talking about academia. We're talking about churches. Pastor Davis and I can speak very extensively around the church piece, because as church attendance has continued to dwindle in the last 10 years, church leaders, specifically in larger denominations within the Black community, they still hold sway. You never have to step foot into a church to be positively or negatively influenced by that church leadership. You never do, because sometimes you simply know the person's name, and because a particular type of scandal has never been attached to them, you will begin to believe that, oh, okay, I can listen to her, I can listen to him. When in actuality, if the communities where those churches are not having positive changes, until we are able to no longer need food pantries in our churches, then we're not focusing on the basic needs of the people who come to our churches. And so when we talk about a political elite, we're not only talking about elected officials. That would be too easy. And it often is, because it is a huge circle of influence that they are, as Pascal Robert says in his article, pandering ultimately to their corporate sponsors. And we have to be able to speak about this in order to ever have anything change in our situation. So what we're going to do, we're not doing round robins, we're just speaking. So brothers, tell me, what are the top 3 things that you believe is most harmful to our community, based off of Mr. Robert, his comments and his premise in the article, that they're telling us what their corporate sponsors want us to know?
Well, I think, I'll start with, and I'll be brief, is the fact that, first of all, Pascal Robert, I follow him on social media. He pulls no punches, man. He's as radical as they come. Sometimes ultra radical, which I think is needed. And I think when you read his article, when he talks about the fact that he says more often than not, when you see Black people in the media, they are either millionaire athletes and entertainers or poor, dysfunctional people inclined to criminality, right? Or other underclass pathologies, right? And that this class polarity is an illusion that erases the vast majority of Black Americans, is lost on many Americans. Like Black people are lost, right? Because, and one of the things he says is we flatten out Black life, right?
Yes.
We I guess what he means by that is, by flattening it out, is we fail to take into consideration Black people on a whole, right? Meaning with all this texture, diversity, varying political viewpoints. So we don't ever consider the diversity within our community, in terms of even our politics, that some of us are conservative or more liberal or whatever the case may be. It's not just one size fits all. We're not monolithic, and that's a problem. And so what you have in the media is almost like this constant brand that we're fed. It's like it's a program that we're fed. And I think really at the end of the day, when he talks about the fact that these are millionaires and entertainers and things like that, what happens is that when he talks about the economic diversity of Black life is not conveyed, right? It's not brought at the forefront. And so I always think that whenever you have not just the political elite, but it's the economics of it, it's the financial elite that's really leading the charge, right? And the problem is that those who are, making big money control the politics,
right?
They control the media, they control the agenda, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or anything else for that matter, because at the end of the day, it's all about making sure that whether it's the liberal white or the conservative white, their lifestyle, their agenda, right, is protected by the political arena. And I think a lot of these elites that we're talking about protect that agenda because they're being paid from it.
Yes.
And at some point, we have to move away from money. And unfortunately, even within, whether it's the leadership or the public intellectuals or the clergy or civil rights leaders, every one of them are getting paid, man. They're getting paid handsomely. It's become big business to talk about Black life. And you're branded that way. And one of the things that I make clear on even on my Facebook on occasion when I do talk about serious things is the fact that for those who are leaders, you can't be driven by money. You can't be driven by greed. Either it's one or the other. Either you're going to do this in terms of, and I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with money. There's nothing wrong with taking care of your family. There's nothing wrong with having wealth. I'm not saying that wealth is bad. I'm saying in and of itself, it's not bad. But when that's the priority, when that's the driving force in terms of, what should be driving you morally, that you have a problem, right? And I think for the leadership that we have out here, for them, it's almost all about money and not about those who are suffering, right? So when he talks about flattening out, that's the problem. Yeah. We don't hear the voices of the poor or the disenfranchised or the suffering, the homeless or what have you. And Black people are dying in levels I just don't think the general public understands. And the last point I'll make is the fact that, you have such violence going on, such like the crimes that we're seeing, the shootings that even in the Bronx where we live, Pastor Deb, it's all symptomatic of what we're talking about.
Right.
That we have failed people out here where they're in despair and hopeless. And, we need to hold people's feet to the fire, as we said.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What do you say, Tony, about all of this?
You're muted, Tony. You're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Sorry about that. I had a little bit of noise in my background, but I read the article and I thought it was really, really, really good. It spoke to a lot of the things that I've been talking about for a while. But when it comes to the flattening of the Black community, as he phrased it, I would even go as far as to say it's more of an erasure. It erases the majority segment of Black people by basically diminishing us to either ultra wealthy, like athletes, celebrities, or super poor and hyper violent.
Yes.
And it leaves out a huge portion of the rest of the Black community. So, and that's economically and also ideologically, because if you were any person from any other country or any other demographic, you would think that all Black people are Democrats and like they're all living in like poverty, right? So there's this it's a very narrow representation of our community. And when you talk about the harm, because I believe you asked pretty much like what is some of the harm that I guess our community experiences from this type of stuff, I would say like after the more radical politics of let's say the 1960s, it's like the whole establishment, those politics, it granted like the Black political class authority and access which they used like to direct Black people to like kind of herd us into this loud but safe status quo type of politics. We're loud, we're very, passionate, but a lot of the things that we fight and we advocate for, they don't really serve our community. And so, so there's that one aspect of the harm. And also economically, we're just out of time. We're out of time. And it's what's crazy to me is that our financial, our economic footprint was much more solid back during Jim Crow than it is today. We have steadily been declining in our wealth index as compared to other groups, and we're headed towards a total, value, like I guess the family wealth value of like zero in like maybe 15 to 20 years. So for me, like I said before, we're doing something very, very wrong. And it's not, and I don't want to just like point the finger at the Black political class, because it isn't just the Black political class. And we have to also look at whose interests are they serving and who are they really representing. So I want to dig deeper into that too, because it's not just the Black community that's being harmed. I know that sounds weird coming from me, but it's not just the Black community that is being harmed from these politics. It is the middle class and the poor who are being harmed by these establishment politics that utilize Black leadership as a very strong segment of their mechanism to carry out their agenda.
Yeah, and what he refers to them as, and Pastor Davis and I use the word gatekeeper all the time, and because that's really what they are. And he says that they are race managers. They have been disseminated to manage us, and that is what they do. They manage us because we get caught up in the symbolism, the representation. Oh my, I'm so glad to see a first, a second, and all of those things. Now, I'm not going to be overly critical, but I do want to point out that yesterday, the vice president, she had a meeting, a round table with some Black female leaders. I know a couple of them by name. I just haven't seen the full list. And I like what they do. I like what those two, whose names I recognize, do. But here's the problem, and it goes to what you were saying about beyond the flattening out, because what Pascal Roberts says is that either they're millionaires or they're criminal. And that's what you both were saying. The violence is just out of control. We were talking about the Bronx, but also New York City in general, but throughout the country. So you either have the super rich, the rich, who everyone in the middle and at the bottom rung wants to aspire to be, or they are cast into that criminal element, meaning that some of them in that poor or middle area have no choice but to go in that direction. So either way, we're striving to become these millionaire Blacks, or circumstances pulls us into the criminal element, which doesn't properly represent us, because the middle is so much greater than those two flattened categories that we've been put into. So back to the women that were invited. I know, and a lot of people know one of them. Fewer people knows the other one, who I'm familiar with. Here is my question. What does her having a meeting with them do for us on the ground in our communities? What does that do for us? What is it doing for us?
Nothing. And this is, and I can say nothing because we've seen this before, time and time again. And that's a problem I have, especially when it comes to these people who have these symbolic positions. And I hate to call it that, but that's what they largely are. They're symbolic positions, because we're always full of firsts. When Joe Biden got elected, I remember I put up a post. I was like, get ready for a hell of a lot of firsts. And, we celebrate that. We're always celebrating firsts or access, giving us access to have certain conversations and receive certain platitudes. But when it comes down to getting tangible policies or real action, something that actually affects the larger community, it's always crickets. And that's this is a major problem that I have. And it's not to say that the people who go and meet, let's say the people who go and meet the Kamala Harrises, or they go meet with the Jim Clyburns and the CBC and all of these people. I'm sure that there are those people within the activist community and organizing community or whatever, where they may have the best intentions. But unfortunately, the way that this system is set up, and it's not just the political system, it's just this whole entire establishment that gives you access to wealth, opportunity, celebrity, politics. In order for you to climb that ladder, you always got to compromise just a little bit for each step that you take up that ladder. And what I always say to people is don't abandon the mission on your way to your destination. Because what happens is people, we start off, we have the best intentions. I'm poor. I know the struggle. And, I get involved with politics. And as you start to climb that ladder and get more notoriety, more access, build more relationships, you got to quiet yourself a little bit when you get into certain rooms, and then as you get even higher on that ladder, okay, well, let me compromise this much, because you know what? When I get to where I want to get, it'll be all good. And as you continue to climb this ladder, you start to accumulate more privilege, more access. You're in new circles, more wealth. And unfortunately, what happens is by the time you get to that top of the ladder, you're so far removed from what you were fighting for in the beginning. You're detached from it. Either you can no longer relate, or you have gone so deep, you're in too deep where you can't really turn back. Because if you start to fight for and advocate for the things that you were truly advocating for in the beginning, it's going to knock you right off of your pedestal where you are. So there's too much compromise in order to see any degree of I don't even want to say justice, but any progress. Therefore, we have to redefine maybe the route that we're going to take in order to achieve some of these goals, and not necessarily navigate through the channels that are provided to us by this white corporate establishment, because that's what's happening. We're looking for opportunity through the channels that they're providing us, instead of building our own channels and relying upon that and building within our own community. And listen, if we got to work a little bit harder and it's going to take a little bit longer, so what? But that's what real progress is. That's when we actually achieve something, it'll be something that is ours and that we can hold on to.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I wanted to just, and you can definitely jump in, but I wanted to share from a post you made today, Pastor Davis, that really resonated with me, because as clergy, and my good friend is here, Dr. Dawn Snell, and I think you know her. This is what Pastor Davis posted early this morning, I believe. If you don't mind, do you mind if I share it?
No, not a problem. No.
Okay. And this, I used to lose a lot of sleep about it as a clergy person, but it's really good when I know people like Pastor Davis and Dr. Dawn resonate with the way I think about the scriptures. And there are not a whole lot of us who have this type of common thought. And I'm just being very candid with everyone. But he put up here, for the lips of a priest should guard knowledge, and people should seek instruction from his mouth. For he is the messenger of the Lord of hosts. And that's from Malachi chapter 2, verse 7. And then Pastor Davis's commentary to that scripture was, Clergy should be able to provide answers for people. That's their job. Point blank, period. And I love that, Pastor Davis, because the reality is it's not happening wholesale. It's just not happening. And it's hurting the people every day. You know, we contribute to them going out between the months of October and December and spending their rent money, their utilities money, transportation on all of these gifts for celebrating Christmas. But they go into the new year, prepared for utter bankruptcy,
right,
or just being thrust into poverty because of the emphasis the clergy places on these very commercial times of year. So if I cannot say what your total intent was, but it just resonated with me. And if you don't mind sharing what you were about to say, or even about that.
No, you really captured what I was trying to say with that post, and really the conversation that we're having right now is in that same spirit, and it's just these inner, musings, and even some of the points that Tony had made earlier in regards to, he was talking about building our own, I guess platforms and but it's hard because how do we do that, right? And how do we, the voices that we have here, how do we make sure that they're heard a certain kind of way? And just from a personal experience point of view, in our community back in 12 years ago when we had that forum, it was called "It Ain't All Good in the Hood," right? I had that forum, and in that, I came across and had to interact with leadership, whether political, or those who are part of the Black intelligentsia, the public intellectuals, those who are the gatekeepers, right? Had to interact with them in putting together, Tony, a program to deal with some of the challenges in our community. And one of the challenges was interactions with police, in addition to the rise of gang activity and the lack of education as an outlet for these people. So what I did with this forum was trying to build something, me working in higher education, provide access towards higher education to my community. We brought the borough president in and a big name speaker who I won't say his name, but in dealing with some of the Black gatekeepers, what I discovered in my interactions with them was that just to come in to speak to the community, right? And just be there as a gatekeeper, as a leader, someone who is inspirational, someone who that we see is a name that we recognize. We are in need. We need you to come in and help us. To do that, the amount of money that was being charged just to do that for 30 minutes was obscene. Was obscene. And so we finally got one of them to come to speak, and he did a wonderful job, a masterful job for 30 minutes, but it was a tremendous amount of money, right, to do this that my church paid. And I was stupid because I'm thinking, hey, I'm trying to do it the right way, do it through the gatekeepers, right? These are the gatekeepers, right? This is the way you do it. I brought him in, he spoke, did his thing, 45 minutes to an hour, tremendous amount of money, right? So I'm trying to build coalitions, I'm trying to build relationships, I'm trying to help my community. In any follow-up interaction with this individual, he said, I'll see you once you get on the national scene. He says, you're really good at what you do, right? On this level, you did a great job. But you know what? When you get bigger and you get more put on and you get your brand up, that's when I rock with you, right? So I'm like, wait a minute. So I got people in our community, because at that time, you saw, Pastor Deb, a lot of red. Kids were wearing a lot of the red apparel for the Bloods, the gang like the Bloods that was around the community. And it was concerning at that time. So we're trying to deal with that. Among other issues that were happening at that time. We're trying to deal with it. That's why it was called It Ain't All Good in the Hood. You're going to tell me in a time of need, when I make it, that's when you're gonna put me on. That's when you're gonna deal with me. Other than that, I'll see you till then. That's what we deal with.
Well, that's a prime example of the problem, and I see that person as part of the problem, and
Absolutely.
I would no longer even move in that direction because I know their contribution to this is not something that is sincere.
But to your point, I want you to talk on this. To your point that you were making earlier, how to build, right? So at that time, the paradigm or the framework to build something, I'm thinking, being naive at that time, coming up, trying to do it the right way, the way I understand it to be, right? Understood it to be. And I've grown past that, but I'm just saying,
right?
We see the framework. A lot of us are trying to do it the way we think we're supposed to do it, but this is what you get, right? And so it's shocking because, and I would have done it different. Now in hindsight, I'm like, oh yeah, I could have did this differently. But when you see the paradigm, now we have to have a paradigm shift. This is why we on this platform, right? We're shifting it, right? But that's the problem. Shifting people away from that when that's all they know. It's like Jesus coming in saying these Pharisees are all wrong. People are like, well, that's all we know.
Right. No, you're right. You're right. Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before anyway. I mean, it takes time, and we're used to doing things. We're used to instant results, like instant gratification. We're used to everything happening the fast route. We pay a couple of dollars. We got this person, and now we're gonna make it. This is the mission, and we made it big. It doesn't happen that way. And when it comes to people who are genuinely on task with the mission, I think patience is the most key element to this whole entire thing. It's patience. And it gets hard when you see the commercial success of so many others. See, we're chasing commercial success instead of community success.
Right.
And that's why I say, we have to stop looking through their channels and start looking to each other and serve as that example for others to see, because it does spread. Everything spreads in the Black community. Somebody's doing something, somebody else is going to be inspired, somebody's going to follow. See, I don't get discouraged. Listen, even right now on social media, on Facebook, I'm shadow banned. Like I had thousands of followers, people, I had a lot of activity on my page, right? But when you tell the truth, what happens? You get targeted, you get silenced. Is it going to stop me? Is it going to deter me from my mission? No, it won't. Because for me personally, as long as I have a positive impact on even one person, I feel that I've done my job. And that's the God's honest truth. So I think the more people see that sincere and genuine type of commitment to the community, I think it's infectious. And then you start to see those same selfish, big name, commercially successful people. They're going to start to follow. And that's the funny thing too. Everything moves by trends. You ever notice that? Like everything moves by what is popular at the moment. And things that are popular usually start on the ground. It just gets co-opted and taken by everybody at the top. So we're always looking to get to the top when we don't even realize that most of the most influential and impactful things are actually, rooted in everybody at the bottom anyway. So, I'm not discouraged. I would, we have to build something for our own. And listen, it's 3 of us here today. Next month it might be 10 of us. The next, after that it'll be 50. Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as we remain true to the mission, and that's the thing. Speaking about the huge event that Pastor Davis hosted, I did not know that person said that to you. I knew that it was expensive, but there is a name that I will drop, because a couple of years before that event, I had Dr. Joy DeGruy up here. She's the author of the Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Mm-hmm. We have 3 huge auditoriums here. About 1,500 people or something like that. Totally standing room only for Dr. Leary, because Dr. DeGruy, because her book had recently come out. And let me tell you how differently, and she's a public intellectual, right? Let me tell you the difference between her and the persons that Pastor Davis is talking about. She has family and friends in Mount Vernon. We're in the Bronx. She's like, oh, Pastor Jenkins, I won't charge you for lodging because my family and my friends are right there. She lives on the West Coast somewhere. She, I don't even remember, honestly, I don't remember paying for her travel. She was coming to New York anyway. So she eliminated that and she only charged her speaking fee. And it did not break our backs. We charged a nominal entrance fee because we had to ensure that we didn't run the space. But that's the total difference between the person that Pastor Davis is talking about and Dr. DeGrew. I will always put her name out there because she was very genuine in our lead up conversation. She gave me time on the phone. You know why? Because I believe she's totally committed to changing our community for the better. Right. And she's even come under a lot of criticism about her theory. I am totally sold on her theory of post-traumatic slave syndrome because I always wondered why I was so restless. And her book gave me personally a lot of answers. Let me say this real quick. A brother who I interact with all the time on Twitter, he has a platform. Please drop the name of your platform in here because I don't want to leave an R out or a B out. But it's called blabber.com. And he's doing exactly what Tony, we've been talking about for months, getting our own platform. But he and I and some others will be undertaking a project soon to look at the Congressional Black Caucus and what they're actually doing for their communities. You see, often we will see them, we root for them to get their longevity committee assignments. And so we're happy for them. We're like, yes. I'm not dropping any names, but once we do this report, you all can do with it what you want. We're not selling it, but we will be releasing it so that people will understand that just because they've been there for 20 and 30 years does not mean that they're the people who are about to primary them should not be looked at. So for instance, James Clyburn down in South Carolina, he's being primary. It's his district, I understand, is the 6th poorest,
of course,
in the nation.
But of course.
But what do we see when we and I'm, I don't mean any disrespect, but guess what? The fact that would be true, that's a bigger disrespect than me not meaning to be disrespectful to him, having the 3rd highest seat in the House of Representatives. But the people in his district suffer. And we're so happy because he has he's risen to that position. Look how many years he's had to be there before he would even get that position. That's one thing, but it's really about the people that he's representing, and what he's not doing or what he is doing. So there is a young man who is primarying him, and his name would never be known on a national scale because it doesn't serve the interest of the gatekeepers for us to hear that Representative Clyburn is being primary. It doesn't serve the interest. Why? Because he's been given the moniker of kingmaker. Who did he make a king? He made Joseph Biden the king. And Black people are relished in that thought rather than what's happening in his district. And it's time out for us always being on the short end of the stick for national politics. All politics is local. So if we look around and we see nothing happening in our communities for the better, we need to rally behind those people who say it's time for us to look elsewhere for representation that will bring the services and the dollars home to our community. And we need to start doing that without apology.
Right. That's actually been pretty common. Like the majority of our Black, congressmen, congresswomen, they're in some of the poorest districts, and a lot of them have been there for forever. Yeah. And nothing has changed. So, I mean, that alone should open people's eyes. And when it comes to not just these politicians, but I think a lot of the white designated leaders, because that's what they are. Because when corporate media and you know, the political establishment designates this black political class. This is white appointed leadership anyway, right? We didn't ask for it. They delivered it to us. But I think many of these people advocate for themselves, their own interests and the interests of their colleagues, right? And they do that as a like some type of a representation of justice and equity for the larger community, which in most cases it only serves as just a symbolic victory that only they benefit from. So that's one of the reasons why we have to really let go of the whole symbolism thing, because it offers us the illusion of progress, because we like to live vicariously through our favorite, you know, celebrities, activists, and politicians, when nothing is really tangibly happening for us.
Right. This is a question, Pastor Davis, before you go on. I think it's in response to something you said, Tony. My mentee, Leilani Lopez, asked, but how can we practice patience when we want our community to win, but some people within the community are intoxicated with the crab in the barrel syndrome? That's a good question that she's asking.
And that is a good question, because that's a question that I have. And I understand Tony's point, and I agree about patience. But I think when I talk about the event that I had, there really was no patience, because we were in a period of urgency, right? And if the gatekeeper gives the illusion of loving the poor, that's the language, right? Loving the poor and the disenfranchised. That's the rhetoric. They reel us in with words that are, you know, a lot of that sound good, a lot of rhetoric. But when you look at the substance, it's not real. And that's what we see with Clyburn. It's the same type of stuff, that it's a lot of symbolism. It's a lot of, you know, whatever it is, nostalgia, or sentiment, or whatever. But from a substance point of view, it's not there. And so I think that with being primaried, among other things, that there's a sense of urgency coming from really the younger group in particular, that they're holding this older group, us, and also as I get older, accountable.
Yeah.
Because there is an urgency, because they're coming up in dire straits, you know, when it comes to their economic situation and the opportunities for them. It's not the same, right? And so yeah, I mean, we have to be patient in terms of certain aspects and certain things that we have to be demanding. And I understand why this younger group is as demanding as it is, and can sometimes be demanding to the point of almost sounding disrespectful. But now I don't get offended by it,
right?
Because I'm starting to understand, like, hey, this is serious, and we can't allow somebody just to be a kingmaker when you have the 6th poorest district. That cannot happen.
It cannot.
And does the general population really understand that? And they don't, because if they did, you know, and even if they do, they'll make excuses for it. And I think we have to stop that and really. But again, as we said about the Democratic Party, a lot of these places that are very Democrat, they have, you know, great deal of poverty or homelessness, or, you know, stuff that we're talking about. So it's time out for that, as they say.
Time out.
Just to kind of address that question a little bit. I mean, I understand, you know, patience, yeah, it is a part of it, but I think a bigger part of it is commitment and discernment, right? As it applies to what we're talking about here, because we get it. You know, it's hard to be patient when you're in a state of emergency. But more important than that patience is the commitment, which is what's going to bring things to fruition, and also discernment. So we're not so easily manipulated. So we're not so easily, you know, investing so much of ourselves into, let's say, these people like the person you said that you had that came out. You know, we're able to discern who's real and who isn't. And if he's not real like that, then we just use those people for the purposes that we need them for in order to get the task done. You know what I'm saying? Because unfortunately, it's kind of like it's the playing field. It's not ours. and we choose to continue to play on this field. I'm just saying, when we play on a different field, it's going to be everything is different. We get to set the rules. We get to set the tone. We get to decide how we're going to do things. So I think when you have more control of the process, that yields more control of the outcome. But we're never going to realize that as long as we continue to invest so much of our time and resources into the avenues that they provide for us. It gets frustrating when we don't know what's ahead and we're watching everything decline, but slow and steady wins the race, right? And from my experience, and faith plays a part in this. You know what I'm saying? As long as your intentions are righteous and you're putting in the work and you're doing things for the right reasons, I firmly believe that things will come in due time. And so I think the key element is commitment and discernment.
No, you're absolutely correct. I'm sorry, Pastor David, but you're absolutely correct. But I think that, and I want to I'll speak really for, we can say things like that because we may be somewhat privileged to be somewhat comfortable, right? We can be patient. There's a group of people that cannot be patient. So what I'm saying when you talk about being prophetic, right? Mm-hmm. There has to be a sense of urgency in our messaging. And as we're having this conversation, Pastor Deb, the first thing that comes to my mind is Jesus flipping over the tables. Like at some point, it's almost like you have to flip some stuff over and really call it out.
Yes.
And say enough is enough, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't have a plan. I'm not saying don't strategize. I'm not saying that there's a long-term plan, because obviously we have to do that. But what I'm saying is we've allowed so much to stay in place for so long.
That's just it. I hate to say it. Sorry to cut you, but it's kind of like you make your bed, you got to lie in it. So it's like,
who's made the bed though?
And that's the question. See, we can't just point the finger at the Black political elite either. We have to also look at ourselves, who have been following.
When we say ourselves, who's ourselves? Those who the poor and the disenfranchised, or those who
see like us,
or who have a little bit more than them, right? Who's the one that made the bed?
Everyone who has followed behind this symbolism in replacement for actual tangible progress is responsible. I get it that some people are in harder financial times, but it doesn't change the fact that if you decide that you only want to listen to you only want to follow symbolism, and you just want to, and I get it also. It's also easier to take advantage of people who are suffering, and that's the problem.
But that's what I'm saying, that again, I think sometimes when we talk about these things, we talk about, we flatten out people. Even we can be guilty of flattening out people or making people disappear. The voices of the people that we're talking about are not being heard, and they don't have access to the things that I have. Now, I make decent money. I make pretty good money. I'm in the middle class, comfortably. Mm-hmm. So I can talk about patience, but what I'm saying is I have to change the way I think and look at the urgency of the people who don't have what I have, right? And so what I'm saying about being prophetic, I have to change my lens. Yeah. So we need to start calling some people out, right? And there's a certain level of radicalism that requires, and like I said, a sense of urgency. And so yes, you're right. There's a patience. There's a long game, but there's also a need to hold people accountable now. And that's why.
Yes. I agree with that. I agree with that. Definitely, brother. I'm just saying that process is not an overnight process, because we're already in too deep, that, so to speak. We're in the mess pretty deep. And unfortunately, I understand the whole thing about, what do we do? The time for patience is over, but we can't ignore the part that we have all played in it. And we've all played, in my opinion, a very significant part in this. It's not just middle class people who I'm trying to talk to and explain like why you don't need to be voting like this. And it's all of us. I think that we've all fallen for the whole scam.
But I would say that the gatekeepers are the ones. This is where where I'm going to lay my criticism. The gatekeepers, the people that we're talking about, right? They're responsible. We are responsible for educating even the least of these, because not everybody has the same level of access.
Right, but poverty doesn't. But people who, but not having economic means doesn't.
Yes, it does. It has all to do.
I didn't even see what I was saying, brother. I'm saying not having economic means does not necessarily mean that a person does not understand, or a person.
No, but that's the point I'm making. That it does impact your financial situation. Does impact. It can impact, right, and it largely does impact how the information that you get, right,
you have access to,
and access to information, to the stuff that we're talking about. So it does impact. It can and does impact, right? So when those of us who know better, we have to do better for those who don't have that voice. And I don't want to be. That's the whole point that I think Pascal Robert was talking about, like the flattening out of people, causing people to be disappeared. That we have to speak for those who don't have a voice, because they're the ones drowning right now. I can afford to. I'm not going to speak for anybody on this panel. I can afford to be patient. There are those that cannot afford.
I can't.
I'm just saying, yeah.
Like, but I get what you're saying, but I just feel like
let me explore this with you a little bit more, because I feel like here on this panel right now, and certainly the folks who are responding to us in the comments, and I thank you, audience. You all are great tonight. You are. I'm waiting for Bishop to jump on here. He already done spoke about this, but I've sent him the invitation, and hopefully he'll be able to join us before you have to leave, Pastor. Oh, I spoke him up. You know, it's like asking, you shall receive. Bishop Darren Ferguson is joining us this evening. Hi, Bishop. How are you?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hey,
good, and it's good to see you here. I know you were listening, so let me try to respond to Tony. Yes, Tony. I'm waving my hands and saying I was hoodwinked. I was bamboozled. I was led astray. So once I make that admission, then I have to turn to those who can't afford to be patient. Because if we have another 4 years where we are only talking about a person's character and personality and not talking about what's not getting done, our state as Black people will be far worse than it's ever been. And I'm really sounding that alarm, than it's ever been, because honestly, during Reconstruction time, our ancestors were doing much better than most of us today.
Yeah,
right.
So we have to be able to get back to that and move forward from that.
I think you guys might be confusing when I say when I'm talking about having patience during the process does not mean to abandon any sense of urgency. That's not what I'm saying at all, remotely. But what I'm saying is that we have to also face the reality of the situation that we're in right now. And if we just kind of remain stuck in this thing of being angry and we want this now, right now, with no tangible action plan, it's not going to yield any results. I'm just saying, just like whenever you work hard at something, there has to be a certain level of patience and commitment. You know, you have to be driven and committed. You got to be committed to what you're doing. So I'm just saying, more so from the standpoint of have a belief and understanding that it's going to happen. But I'm not saying just sit back and just be patient. Something's going to happen. We all have a responsibility in this, but we still have to utilize discernment, and we still have to have a certain amount of patience to understand that this is not going to just happen just like that. Because guess what happens when you think it's going to happen just like that? You become impatient, you become frustrated, you're hostile, and you know what I'm saying? And it's things get a lot more complicated from there. So I think some of us definitely do have a greater responsibility towards others in this situation. Absolutely. But I think that we all have to pretty much figure out how to use better discernment and take responsibility, because it isn't just the Black political elite that got us here. They were the mechanism, but we were still drinking it all up. I mean, how many people were warning black people all across the board about Joe Biden and about Democrats for how long? We've been having this conversation forever. Every time black people speak up, whether they be poor, middle class, or whatever, whenever they speak up about the bamboozlement, we get attacked by our own people, not just the black political elite. We get attacked from all across the board. So I'm just saying we all have a reckoning here. That's my opinion. Listen, I'm poor. I've grown up poor. I grew up poor. But one thing as a poor person, my parents were very committed to educating their children and giving them access to information. So I don't want us to discount, people who are more economically disenfranchised as they just don't know better. I just don't want us to do something like that.
Oof.
Bishop, come on in here. Listen, and I do want to address Gloria Miller's points, because this is something that we don't talk about either. The abortion rate within the black community, and the genocide from abortions. And let me say this, people, and this is just me before Bishop Darren jumps in here. Let me say this. I'm just using an example. I'm really a nerd. I've been a nerd part of my life, most of my life. Okay. But this is just an example. If I were a falling down, rolling in the ground, acting up in the street, alcoholic, drunk, and somehow God got me up from that state, and I no longer desire alcohol, that doesn't mean that because once I was an alcoholic that I cannot speak against the destruction or the destructive nature of drinking too much alcohol. And I think that's what happens when you have issues like abortion and even homosexuality. It's not about hating people, and it's not about that whole expression. What do people say about homosexuality? I love the people, but I hate the sin or something like. I'm not talking about that, because I'm not that type of follower of Christ. I'm just talking about Black people aren't even expected to say what Gloria Miller is putting in this chat. And that's why I put every last one of her comments up here, because this is a platform where that is welcome. The four of us don't have to agree, but her voice is important to me. And guess what? What she's talking about is important to the community. And so if we've adopted a white liberal feminist attitude toward the destruction of our own people and our own community, then shame on us. And we have to give audience to what Gloria is saying, because what she's actually doing is she's putting the receipts in the chat. So I said that to honor your comments, Gloria, but I want to bring Bishop Darren Ferguson into the conversation. Welcome, Bishop.
Hey, how y'all doing? I'm sitting here, my head is exploding because there's so many things.
So many things.
This is a very nuanced conversation. And I think one of the problems that we're having in our communities, we've lost in the muck and mire of partisan politics, amongst other things, the ability to have nuanced conversations and being able to agree in totality, but also to disagree on certain points within that. That being said, one thing that I think is plaguing us as Black people, something I was talking to my daughter about, is when we were talking about politics, and I said, one of the issues with Black folks in politics is that we're in a tier system, right? My wife has been working in City College for 20-something odd years, and there's a tier system. If you came in when she came in, her benefits and what she's going to get out of it and the contributions that the college makes is on one level. But somebody who's coming in right now gets a whole lot less. So she may be, if there's a work stoppage or work action against City College, she's a lot less likely to want to participate in that because she has a lot more to lose because she's invested all of those years into City College, and she's got a 401k and she's got this and she's got that. And we as Black people are the same way with America. If somebody's, I'll be 58 in a few weeks, right? There's a certain point where it said, well, I got a house, I got a mortgage, I got this, I got that, and we have become, in many ways, I always use this analogy. If you remember the original Roots, we've become Fiddler instead of Kunta Kinte. right? Kunta Kinte was trying to run. He had just come from Africa. He was trying to get out of there. He wasn't trying to assimilate. He wasn't trying to be a part of this system that they had created for him. So he was running. He was doing everything he can to get out of that system. But Fiddler told him, he said, listen here. He said, every now and again, the master good to me. He give me a little drink of corn liquor and let me sleep in a big house, and I ain't gonna let no African guinea man come and mess all of it up for me. So now you're looking at the conversation being had between those who've invested their entire lives into this political system, into the Democratic Party. But the young folks are saying, you've invested into what? It means what to me? What am I getting out of it? Right. What is going to be the end game for me? So they're saying, no, tear it down. Let's get rid of all of it. Whoa. You tear it down, there go my 401k, there go my this, there go my that. What am I going to do? Where's my legacy when I'm leaving? And people are saying, listen, you're talking about a legacy of nothing, because the little bit of chump change that you're leaving behind is not enough to change generations. And what we're looking at us still fighting for crumbs from the table when we're talking about people like Elon Musk and all of these folks with generational wealth that can change the course of entire planets with the money. This guy, what's the dude? He's flying into outer space. He's taking Captain Kirk into space.
Jeff Bezos, right?
Fighting over crumbs, right? And then when we talk about abortion and all of that, so now I have this real dichotomous relationship with the abortion issue, because on one hand, I am very pro-choice. I don't believe that as a man, I have a right to tell a woman what to do with her uterus, because I don't have one and ain't never had one. So I think that women have a right to choose whatever we want to do. That being said, we also cannot allow abortion to be a method of birth control.
Which is what
we've allowed ourselves to say that, okay, well, if you get pregnant, you can just have an abortion. And it's so much more complicated than that. There's so much more that goes into it than that. And there's so much more damage that's done to it. And I can tell you this now, my mother, God rest her soul, this is the last point I'm going to make about abortion. My mother, God rest her soul, I had from the age of 15 up until the age of 25, when my daughter was born, there were 4 children that I had sired that were lost to either one was miscarried, and there were 3 or 4 abortions. And my mother, I would always tell her, and she always say, my grandbaby would be this age right now. And that always bothered me. It's always bothered me. My oldest child, I have one child, she's 32. My oldest child would be in their early 40s at this point. And I'd have a 42-year-old, and I have like a 40-year-old, and like a 37-year-old. If it wasn't for abortion, and while I regret it, I can only imagine what the women who had those abortions are going through. So there's psychological reasons, there's emotional reasons, there's physical reasons, and there's social and spiritual reasons why we need to address the abortion issue. And the fight that's being had in the Supreme Court with Roe v. Wade and restricting women's rights and all that, that's not the question. It's a moral question that we're not talking about. We're talking about, look, I said, for women, once she can do what she wants to do with her body, but we're supposed to teach our daughters better before they get to the age where they're making that choice. And I understand people saying that abortion is murder. I understand it. And I understand people who say that they believe that a woman has a right to choose. But I think it all comes down to education. And one of the things that I taught my daughter from the time that she was old enough to understand pregnancy was that abortion is not an option for you, because it's not birth control. If you don't want to get pregnant, don't get pregnant. And don't look at abortion as a way to end a pregnancy once you've had it. That's one of the many nuanced conversations that we have to have. And
Bishop, this question is for you.
Aaron Jackson says, no, abortion is not a birthright. Abortion is a choice. It's a much different, it's a choice. Just like people make choices to do all kinds of things that they should or should not do, abortion is a choice. And no, it's not a birthright. But I think that it's a right that has been given to women legally. And if that's what they choose to do with their body, I don't have a right to tell them not to. I have an obligation to educate them better, to do better than what they've been doing as a whole with the whole abortion issue. That's where I land on it.
And this
is where some people, oh, you're riding the fence. I am riding the fence because I don't have a uterus, and I never will.
So as the only person on this panel having a uterus, okay, let me speak from my perspective as a faith leader. I have long criticized the church for allowing abortions to even be a thing. Let me tell you, I have long criticized. I have grown up in the church, born in the church like many of you. And all that I heard growing up, you did a good job with your daughter from what you just shared with us, Bishop. All I heard was don't do it. Don't do what? Don't have sex. Without any further instruction, nothing pointing to the scriptures, nothing. And so as a result, what has happened for too many years is that the sister was sent up north, or conversely sent down south, for those 9 months, or she stayed around, but she was shamed out of the church. While we don't know what happened with the male, he was able to probably continue to be a part of the church, but the church has been a colossal failure in terms of women's rights, if we're going to talk about it like that, because we have a right to not give up our child. That's what we have a right for. We're the same people who will say, but you don't care about them once they get here. And you're absolutely right. It is a nuanced conversation when you talk about that type of thing. But when you talk about the failure of the Black community, it has to be laid at the feet of the church. The church has been horrible on this issue. We don't have any idea how many wombs have been torn apart and babies lost because the church failed to do its job. Because to me, it's very simple. We all make mistakes. I may not have been that alcoholic, but we shouldn't place so much fear in the young woman about what will happen, how she'll look if she gets married, get pregnant out of wedlock or something like that, to the point where she no longer even wants to go and get any spiritual nourishment if that is what the church is given. Why can't the church support her if the young man is not around? I watched the piece that MSNBC did last week on the whole Mississippi thing. And I don't know who was the producer of this show, but they found the person, and this is not about her because she told her truth, right? She already had 2 children, Black woman. She already had 2 children. She was living in poverty. She got pregnant with the 3rd. She realized that if she had that 3rd child, she would never.
Did we lose Pastor Deb?
Never be able to claw her way out of poverty. What happened? Oh, I'm so sorry, y'all. Let me try to make that. I don't know what's going on. Please hang with me. So I don't know what part you didn't hear, but she was having her 3rd child, but she wanted to have an abortion because she figured if she brought one more child in, she would never, ever be able to get her and the 2 children out of poverty. That's a horrible example. That is a horrible example. But what happened is whatever their laws are in Mississippi, it had to be during this most recent time because her baby is only 7. She didn't get there in time. She didn't make the decision to have an abortion in time to have the abortion. So 7 years later, her baby is the light of her life, the joy of her life. If they want to put this issue and around economics, sad for anyone who would ever make a decision to terminate a pregnancy because of your economic status. That's crazy to me.
But it happens every day.
And it does. And I'm just saying that the church, I have a friend, Mary Roten. She has started an organization to help single teenagers who get pregnant. She's supporting them with the basics and everything. Our councilman is a part of an organization called the Dad Gang or something, where in the spring or in the early summer, they did a giveaway, right around Father's Day, of strollers and diapers to fathers who are trying to be there, who together with that mother decided, you know what, we may not have nothing, but we're going to have this baby and we're going to take care of this baby. And I think we let each other off the hook too easily. I want you to care. If you're representing the church, I want you to care enough about Deborah to say, you know what? You don't have to be alone during those 9 months. The church is here to help you. That's not happening. It hasn't happened. And I think that's why you have the backdoor pregnancies and everything. And I didn't mean to turn this to that discussion only, because that's not the only issue our community has, but those who are misrepresenting us, the Black political elite, they are at the center of why there's so many abortions, in my opinion. That's my opinion.
I agree. And let me just say this. I remember a few years ago when I was in Far Rockaway, a young lady came to church. She was about 17 and she was pregnant. And her grandmother had told her that she shouldn't come to church because she was an embarrassment to the family. She was pregnant and everything. And she comes and she sat in the church in the back, and she was, and I said, hey, what's the, I said, because I saw her looking, downcast. And I said, what's the matter? She said, well, I really shouldn't be here because I'm pregnant. And you know what I said to her? I said, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And I said, and this church is going to be with you all through the pregnancy and all through whatever you need to do to help raise that child. And we were. And during my sermon that Sunday, I brought her up front and I said, listen, whatever conversation was supposed to happen before she got pregnant obviously didn't happen, and it didn't happen in a way that would have prevented this in any way. So what I'm going to say to you is that what she's carrying in her womb right now is a blessing. And we need to treat it as a blessing. And we need to treat her as a blessing. And we need not treat her like she made a horrible, horrible mistake. We need to treat her like she's bringing life into the world. Right. And that is the spirit by which she should bring her child into the world. And I think we need to do more of that. And if the church was more supportive in that way, I think it would reduce exponentially the number of unwanted pregnancies that we have and the number of abortions, because I think that people would feel more comfortable being themselves within their church setting and not let shame be the factor of why they get abortion.
Absolutely. Well, I'm not going to put all the comments up over there, but Bishop, take a look at them. Let's shift back to the economic impact of.
I just have one quick thing.
Oh, go on, Tony. I'm sorry.
You guys are going a while on the. I just want to make my position clear, right? Like, I know, if we truly do believe, let's say in the church, right, that a child in a woman's womb is a blessing from God, then I would think that we should also, or some should carry the same perspective that abortion is not simply about a woman's body, because it's more than just her body. There is a life inside of her. And while we say that this is a nuanced conversation, I can understand that. But I think we need to also consider that, one, that is a life inside of her. And two, it's not simply just about her body. And it took more than one person to make that child. So I'm never going to take a position like, if someone is having my child, I have no say so in anything. She can just go in and kill my baby without any input from me. That's something that I will never support. Personally, I think that abortions are something that's just overrepresented in the Black community anyway. All the abortion clinics are in our communities. The fertility clinics are in white people neighborhood. Right. So for me, I like I said, yes, a nuanced conversation, but outside of like rape, which is like a fraction of a percent of pregnancies, I personally am not a person that I'm just being real. I don't support like abortion like that. I understand that there may be certain exceptions, but unfortunately, and abortion has been widely utilized as birth control for people to be lazy, not use protection. They don't educate themselves. I know people who have had multiple abortions. And so when you're just looking at the whole social construct of it, we should all kind of be honest with ourselves and know that the majority of people that's having these abortions, they're not having it, because, it's this conscience. I think that a lot of these abortions that we're seeing is more so about convenience as opposed to anything else. So yeah, that's just my position on it. If we believe that a child in her womb is a blessing, then we can't just erase that when saying it's about a woman's rights to her body, because it's not just her body. There's a baby in there.
Absolutely. And I think that there was a time when blacks were not the leading, black women were not those leading in abortions. It has become so convenient. They had a show, I think on HBO Max, I'm not even sure. It's called the stewardess, flight attendant. And she, or some show, no, it was some other show I was watching. She wasn't having an abortion, but she would have a one night stand the next day. The pharmacy knew when she was coming in and when she'd had a one night stand because she was going to get that morning after pill type thing. Well, the same thing with abortions. It has become mainstay. And I think a lot has to do with how the rights of parents have been diminished. In I don't know what happens in other states, but in New York, you know, at 13, your children can go to the school nurse and have contraception prescriptions given to them. The boys can have condoms, you know, both can actually. So many things have usurped the rights of the parents, but I have to say a big shout out to both my parents who are no longer here. When they had my sister who's behind me, when they found out that they had conceived her, it was during the time when if you were over 35 and having a child, oh my goodness, your head was going to explode. Your child is going to be some kind of Frankenstein or something. So my mother's doctor advised them, oh, abort the baby. Now this was an intact family, husband right there. You know, they got a nice little quote unquote nuclear family. That's another story that we need to address one day. But they decided to have my sister. What a great example that was for me. They were like, we ain't rich. You have medical insurance. If she comes or he comes and they're sick, we're gonna do what we've been doing with these other two. We're not going to do anything different. That was the decision that they made together. And so I agree with you. I don't think that we as women have a right to just have relationships with men and then tell them bye. It's the same thing as wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, isn't it? When you say, oh, you got me pregnant, we're not going to make it, so I want to have an abortion. You know, so I agree that it's a decision that you should make together. And sometimes the relationships are not real relationships. And therefore, if she is involved in any faith tradition, I say the church, that church should be right there. Because after all, don't we call them our family? Don't we say this is my church family? We have been a colossal failure as a church. And churches are a part of this political elite. Bishop, pastor, don't your congregants look to you for advice during political times? Don't the politicians come to your churches? They want to present themselves. This is an endless cycle in our community. And we don't ever ask them, well, who are you getting money from? You know, who are your sponsors? And that's what he was talking about in his article, that these black gatekeepers or the petite bourgeois class politicians, they are there for race management. They manage us. They manage who we should vote for. They manage who we should support. Now, right now in New York, for those of you who are outside of New York, we just had major elections. Some of us, Tony, Lindsay, and myself, we cannot wait until January 1st because we have a horrible mayor. We don't know how good or bad the next one is going to be, but this one right here, he is the pits. Lot of turnover in our city. And so what did I see? What did I witness? I witnessed a lot of clergy, and it's still unfolding, trying to scramble to see where they will fall out in this plan. And so somebody, I think it was C.W. Hurd, said a few minutes ago, we need to abandon the Democratic Party. There are some representatives, elected officials that I like and I support, but never again will I just be in lockstep with the Democratic Party. So when you don't see me showing up at stuff, that's a message that you all should take from that. I'm not jockeying for a position, because if that position doesn't help our community, then what good is it? This is no disrespect.
We need to vote our interests, not political party.
I don't wear a color.
That's correct.
I threw them away because I don't want to be identified by my collar. I want to be identified by the work that I do on behalf of my community. That's just me. And that could be, you all could all say that that's being extra. That's me, because what I've seen, and I'm not talking about Bishop Darren, because I have the utmost respect for him. But for others, I've seen how they misuse that same collar. And if I can give y'all a history lesson on the collar, some people wouldn't wear those either. Because are we Protestants or are we Catholic? That's a whole nother show. But the economic impact of these political blacks who are activists, now activists, after Jim Clyburn, the kingmaker, declared that, oh, it's not a deal breaker if qualified immunity is taken out of the George Floyd in Policing Act. Once he speaks, he's like E.F. Hutton, for those of you old enough to know that when E.F. Hutton speaks, everybody listens. That's who Jim Clyburn is. So if he said that, that's why Cory Booker's bill could never get through. You got to connect the dots, everybody, because he sent a signal that there will be no support and that they will be okay. Who's the they? The House Democrats would be okay if qualified immunity was taken out. That's the only thing that we can hold cops accountable for, to stop killing us. So if that's off the table, guess what? We're back to the same that we've always had. You got a new governor in Virginia. One of the first things he said in his acceptance speech on election night was, we're going to protect law enforcement with qualified immunity. So we already know that Virginia plans to continue to do what Virginia has done. But on a federal level, nothing is going to change. So what do the activists do now? Are they just standing and waiting for the next person to be murdered so that they can rally us up again emotionally? These things have to be looked at very closely, because if after a year of protests in the streets all over the country, there are no more protests. We've had 2 case convictions, right? But Black men are still being murdered by law enforcement. But more than that, we're still killing each other in our community. So all of that has to be taken into account, because the Black political elites, they're not doing it. They're just telling us what they want us to do. Who wants to respond to that?
I'm gonna, because I gotta run after this. Yeah, because I have a hard 8:30 stuff. But everything that you just said is right on point, and I think it goes back to what I'll end with for myself. This why I talk about the urgency. Not that we shouldn't strategize or plan or have a long game, but because of the points that you just raised and everybody has raised on this panel, is why we have to escalate the sense of urgency and call out people now, and make change happen now. It's not without aim. It's not without it's the fact that the jig is up, and people have been allowed to do what they do, like Clyburn, for too long, among others. Yeah. Especially when we're talking about the gatekeepers. They have gone on and on and on with a pass, and we have to stop it. So I think it's important that we empower regular people, and what we have on this panel is some regular people with a voice. And my argument is the need to empower regular folk, including those behind us, with information, right, and a blueprint that they can use, tangible stuff, information, to be able to make decisions. Now, when we talk about abortion, everything that you said, I agree with everybody on this panel. But the truth is, or in addition to what everybody says, is that when you look at healthcare disparities, Black women deal with all kinds of issues when it comes to prenatal care. They're more likely to lose a child and lose it during the term of their pregnancy, the full term. Among other issues, they're not treated well when it comes to healthcare, and abortion is a part of that. The more access that you have, the more information that you have, the more availability that you have when it comes to healthcare, you start to see abortions decrease. And a lot of it, again, has to do with the fact of the lack of information. And for me, my emphasis is gatekeepers' responsibility, preachers, prophets, clergy, their responsibilities are to the community to educate. And one of the points that you've been making, Pastor Deb, is we haven't done that. We have to make sure that people understand the landscape, and it's not for me to go seek money, wealth, popularity, positioning. My job is to feed the sheep and to make sure that the sheep can discern.
Right.
But the sheep can't discern if I don't give them the word to use. So that's my thoughts. I gotta take care of my babies.
Say hi to your wife and your babies for us. And I'll meet up with you to get that candy one day. Not that I need the candy, but thank you for being here on this last show, and we'll get back to it in January. But let me say this, unless you two, as Pastor Davis leaves, want to continue on with the abortion thing. I'm really more concerned about the everyday stuff, even though that's at critical mass too, with the numbers. If you all just look in the comments, and I've posted most of them, the numbers are glaring.
Yeah.
The numbers, they don't lie, but they are horrible. I want to give a shout out to Lena Waite for the Shy, how it handled Keisha's decision to have her baby rather than abort her baby. They did an excellent job. She was raped. She was kidnapped by a man in the community. And her first inclination was, I don't want to see him ever again. And therefore, I don't want to see a child that I became pregnant as a result of being raped continuously by him. I don't know why she did it, but I'm so glad Lena Waite let her have her baby. And she was talked into having the baby and giving it up for adoption. She gave her up for the baby, the boy up for adoption. And that was Tabitha Brown, everybody's sweetheart, the vegan sweetheart right now. She gave her up to her in the show, but she realized that she had a connection with that baby. She had a connection with that little boy, regardless of how he came to be conceived. And ultimately, she brought her baby back into her own home. She did a masterful job. So every objection that can be made, poverty, rape, there is a solution, even when she stopped it at the adoption. But the young lady decided to keep her child. I think that's beautiful, because that show is done by a black creator for the Black community. If others watch, good, fine. But she's talking to our community. And though I haven't heard her speak about it, she's sending a message to our community. Abortion is not your only choice. And I loved it. So I just wanted to give her kudos for that. I've been thinking about it for months. Brothers, can we continue conversation for another 15 minutes or so, just to talk about some next steps? I can tell you, one of the brothers that is in the comments, he has an idea, and I think I've mentioned this to you before here, Tony. Charles Blow has a book where he talks about remigrating back down to the South. But this brother has mapped out, and I think it's in his book, it's in Blow's book, the states where we are more heavily populated. And they're not necessarily blue states. They may be red states. And this brother is saying that if we could get the majority populations of Blacks in these states, we would start to see the South even change. And what do you all think about that? And even our political power, if we were to remigrate, so that we would have a greater voice?
I personally think we're on the precipice of a new great migration. You know, there was a great migration in the early 1900s where Black people moved from the South looking for opportunity, work and all those things, seeking wealth and alleged freedom in the North. But I think what we're seeing today is that people are awake to the lie, and you're seeing a lot more of our people moving back to the South. And what's so funny is, who would have thought that the only place that you can find freedom right now in this country are in red states? Now that's because some of the bluest states are implementing some of the most authoritarian policies.
Yeah.
And this is the manipulation. I think this is the bamboozlement of Black folks who have been following behind white liberal politics for the longest amount of time.
Yeah.
So I believe Like, just as, we always say we're not a monolith, although this entire political establishment treats us as though we are. But then again, there's the argument, are we a monolith? Because we tend to vote upward of 90% for the Democratic Party. So we have to take responsibility for the part that we've been playing in this. You know what I'm saying? I believe that we've become so politically lazy, intellectually lazy. We've adopted this American way of anti-intellectualism. I think that's what it is. And I think the people who find themselves in these privileged positions, these political, these boule positions, I think they take advantage of our collective intellectual laziness. But people are waking up, and I find that encouraging. So when it comes to the economic impact of all of this, I think that Black people are seeing that, number one, first of all, the cost of living down south is much lower than it is up here. We just found out that New York City is one of the 2 most expensive places to live in the world, in the top 10, New York City and LA, right? Is anybody surprised by that?
No.
But me personally, I'm not going to be in New York much longer. I'm planning to move down south. I'm going down to Florida. Life is better down there. I've already started some businesses down there. And I think you're seeing so many Black people who have discovered entrepreneurship and self-employment just from the response to this pandemic. Since the onset of COVID, I personally have seen so much more in terms of Black entrepreneurship, and it's encouraging to me. And so I love to see this new era. This is very encouraging to me. I think that there is still hope, but I just think we need to detach ourselves from the teat of white liberalism. And we have to discover our own political intelligence. We need to raise our political IQ and start looking maybe inward, more so than looking to another group to help us or to hold our hand and guide us through, guide us out of this, because we keep looking to our open enemy to solve our problems for us. That's the problem.
Right.
And we keep attaching ourselves to politics that have nothing to do with us. Yeah. That's another thing.
Right.
But I know one thing that you'll never see from the Democratic Party, probably not the Republican Party. I have kind of seen, I'm not going to lie, I've seen a little bit from the Republican Party. But one thing you will never see from the Democratic Party is economic policy directly targeting disenfranchised people. You don't see that. And there's a reason for that. Because if the Democratic Party was so much of a friend to Black people, why is there no type of restorative, no reparative economic policies, anything to repair the Black community? We don't get that. We get Black Lives Matter streets. We get, criminal justice policies. We get LGBT. We get all this other stuff, but we never get any policy that is supposed to impact our families directly when it comes to economics. So, I say get off the Democratic. Oh, I sound like Candace Owens when saying get off the Democratic plantation. But she's kind of right. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not a Candace.
Well, there's a brother right here who said that. You don't have to bring her into this.
Right, but the thing is,
said that.
You know what I'm saying? But what bothers me is that whenever Black people speak independently or they speak outside of the box of the Democratic Party conditioning, they're automatically labeled as being a right-winger or a Republican. No, see, that's because people view political IQs through the lens of partisanship. Right. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. I'm an independent thinker. And we need to learn to vote our interests, right. Not vote party, vote our interests. So I don't care if it's Republican, Libertarian, whoever it is. But if you got the policies that are going to positively impact me and my family, my community, that's who gets my vote. I think we need to start there, and we also need to move in the direction of group economics, because that's where political power is right now.
That was going to be my exact point, Brother Lindsay. I agree with everything you said. One of the things that I've been saying for years is that if Black people would unite economically, we would be able to bring this country to its knees. If we could get 50% of Black people to economically work together. In other words, spending money with corporations that are friendly to us and not spending money with corporations that are not. Investing our money in things that will build wealth for us and not investing our money in things that will build wealth for other people. Collectively coming together and creating businesses and creating economic blocks. Doing things like collectively getting together and buying stocks and bonds and building wealth and all of that stuff. If we did that, if Black people just took one day and said, we're not going to shop on Black Friday, the Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else would be, what do those Negroes want? Give them whatever they want because they in our pockets. But we refuse to do that. We refuse to do it because we're more concerned with getting a $500 75-inch flat screen TV from Walmart on Black Friday than we are about our long-term economic well-being. And it's scary that people don't see it that way. I got in a big argument with one of my former students at Old Westbury because he was saying, I don't see why me taking advantage of the economic opportunities of Black Friday stop us from progressing as a people. And I'm like, did you hear what you just said? There are no economic opportunities on Black Friday. All Black Friday is an opportunity to separate fools from their money so that the corporations can thrive again next year. This is where they make their biggest, longest green. It's just like what's that movie? Hoodlum with Lawrence Fishburne. He started going after what he started to do. He started going after Dutch Schultz. This is where he makes his longest green. We're gonna go after him. We're gonna blow up where he brings in his alcohol because that's where his money's at. And that's when he got Dutch Schultz's attention. And we collectively, as Black people, need to get Dutch Schultz, who I will paint in this particular soliloquy as the Democratic Party. We need to blow up his alcohol reserves so that we can get their attention. But we're not going to get their attention as long as we continue to, as you said, suck from the teat of the Democratic Party. I personally cannot stand Candace Owens, but but a broken clock is right twice a day. And getting out of the Democratic Party is probably one of the smartest things that we can do. Unfortunately, we've created the monolith of the Democratic Party because there's so much Black elitism that is tied up into the Democratic Party.
That plays into the symbolism and the low self-esteem and lack of knowledge of self, because we're so deprived economically and socially that we view success through the lens of the achievement of others and the symbolism that is offered by this commercial corporate establishment. So we're okay going out and buying the 80-inch TVs and spending all of this money on a car that we can't afford. Why? Because it's a status symbol. It's more symbol. Unfortunately, there are so many of us who desire the image of success much more than actual success because it's easier. That's why, we get some money and we buying all this fancy clothes and this and that. But the richest people out there, they're wearing sweats and some 5-10-year-old sneakers. So, I just think the fastest way for us to reclaim some sense of self-esteem, though, is by learning who we are. And that's why we have to really dedicate time to truly educating each other and talking to each other in a manner that is, as my friend Dr. Cleo Monago always says, trance breaking. We have to engage in trance breaking behavior because unfortunately Black people are stuck in a trance. We're stuck in this trance that has us attached to whiteness and all of the ideologies that come with it. And so even in your previous example about, the Dutch Schultz thing and let's get the Democratic Party's attention. Honestly, I ain't looking for nothing from the Democratic Party. I ain't looking for nothing from the Republican Party. If I'm going to grab the Democrats' attention, then we're going to grab the Republicans' attention too and everybody else's attention, because I have no desire to go with one over the other. I only have a desire to navigate this political landscape in the best interest of my community, no matter who I align with at that time. So we need to learn to start getting a little more comfortable with having conversations with people that we're not used to having conversations with. We have to learn how to agree with people that we normally disagree with. We have to stop engaging in labeling others who don't think like us, and also shrinking ourselves and refusing to use our own voices because we're afraid of being judged. That's the problem. We've become a society of cowards. Cancel culture has us on our knees, and it has us even caping for censorship. When Donald Trump got censored, everybody was rejoicing, but you don't even realize that sooner or later it was going to visit you, Black people. You're the most censored and silenced people on this planet. So when you cheer for other people, when we cheer for the same harm to befall others that is being done to us, all we're doing is it's behavior of misery loves company, but we're not getting to the root of the problem. So don't cheer for other people to be censored. Don't cheer for other people to be silenced. Don't cheer for other people to get locked up, falsely accused or locked up for something that they didn't do, all because that's happening to us. No, what we need to do is attack the problem so that we are treated fairly, or more in a manner that or the way that other people are being treated, as opposed to having them treated just as unfairly as us. Because now all we're going to be doing is just basically caping for an unfair system for all and just snatch away everyone's freedom.
I agree. You know, my last paper, when I was in prison, my last paper that I wrote for seminary, my final paper was entitled Plantation Theology. And the theory behind plantation theology is almost like that scene in Harriet, where the Black folks are all gathered out there in the yard, and they got the Black preacher standing there with the white people looking on to make sure that the Black preacher don't say nothing to rile the niggas up. Right? Excuse my language, but that's just what it is, right? So, and we have recreated that same thing within our churches. I've been told so many times over the years that you need to tone it down about your political stance. You need to tone it down. You don't need to be talking about politics. You don't need to be doing this. Just preach the word. Just preach the word. And I'm like, but I mean, what Bible are y'all reading? Y'all, I mean, aren't we talking about the same Jesus that chased the money changers out? Are we talking about the same Jesus who had an opinion about the political stance of those who were in leadership within the synagogue? What are we talking about here? Are we talking about where we just gonna sing these kumbaya moments and get there in church and sing, we gonna sing the same hymns every Sunday, but nobody's getting free? And we're going to preach the same sermons every Sunday, but nobody's getting delivered. And I'm not just talking about spiritually delivered. I'm talking about delivered from the oppression that we live under as a people every single day. And if we, as Black preachers, which is the only place where truth was able to be spoken to power during the civil rights movement, and we've allowed this same pulpit to be co-opted by the nothingness of complacency, as Martin Luther King called it, then what are we doing here? Then we need to shut all our churches down and just sit down and shut up and do nothing, because we're
already doing nothing.
We're cherry picking scriptures, we're cherry picking issues, and we're choosing to be pawns in the white man's game.
Right,
that's pawns in the Democrats' game. So I'm not doing that no more. I'm going to speak truth to power. I preached a sermon last Sunday where I talked about there's a scripture that was talking about where the Jews were very happy because they said that there'll always be a descendant of David on the throne. Think about that. They rejoice because there'll always be a descendant of David on the throne. And they live like that. They live like, I don't care what you do. One of my descendants, one of my kinfolk will always be on the throne. We'll always be in a position of power. We'll always be in a position of authority because we're God's chosen people. And what do? We sit there, oh, my praise ain't nothing but filthy rags, Lord. And we basically, in a lot of our churches, are singing ham bone, have you heard every Sunday, and not preaching the liberating gospel of Jesus Christ. And I refuse to do it anymore.
And here's the thing about the Jewish. I'm speaking about the Jewish, because if you really get into the word, and that's why I'm okay not being invited. I'm really okay, because I haven't gotten to this age, and somebody called me a young'un. Said I had an old spirit. She don't know I'm old, but I haven't gotten to this age to not recognize imposters and the truth. And the reality is, if we really, really, really wanted to tell the truth, if we really, and I know on this platform we can tell the truth, but I know it's not a comfortable truth. What the one of the greatest heists has been the stealing of our true identity, and it's a biblical identity. It did not start when our ancestors were brought here. That's a conversation that should be a part of this conversation. And when I say this conversation, I don't mean tonight, because we don't have the amount of time. I'm talking about the reason why a Black political class can rise up and disenfranchise or help disenfranchise its own. Because even in this season, this is a holy season for those of us who identify as the people of the word. I don't identify because someone told me to believe in Christ and I would be saved. I identify as one of the descendants of David. So that throne that they talk about, that's the throne of my people. And guess what? So many ministers, so many pastors know this truth.
Yeah.
But don't preach it.
They won't share it.
Right.
They won't share it. Why? Because too much is at stake. I love that example where you started, Pastor, because it's the truth, Bishop. How your wife's long tenure at City College compared to a new person coming in who may one day have the same position, but they won't have the same benefits package that she's had because she's been there more than 20 years. And the reality is, we were always a conservative people, Black people. We've allowed our gaze to be put on politics, a white politics that tell us what to think, and prop up our leaders. So where you have a Bishop Darren Ferguson who's being warned in the back rooms to just preach. I had a pastor tell me, get your placard. You know, they give us placards for working with the cops. So what? What do I need a placard? Should I be parking in front of a fire hydrant anyway, when there could be a fire inside of a building that looks of people who look like me? Should I be parking there because I have a placard? That's not why I do what I do. I don't want the accolades. I want to see change. And so when I say this, and I know you guys probably, we want to wind it down. When I say that, we become more conservative the more we amass, right? It is, you know, because economically, for people who have more, there are a lot of more tax benefits, but we don't even know that. So my thing is, we should be teaching our people how to benefit from the tax IRS system too. There are so many things that we have allowed, and that goes back to what you were saying earlier, Tony. We have a responsibility for having been led astray for such a long time. But what I am saying is that not only have they co-opted a story and they stick to it, we need to go back to our story, take back our own heritage, and move forward. The word has it all laid out for us. Why don't we do that if we keep it strictly faithful? But when I think about, there are so many others who don't believe like I do, I'm okay with that, because if they're Black like me, we are all in the same boat together. And I want to give a shout out to the Nation of Islam. I often do, because they do some radical stuff that the church is not doing. They do, right? So they have, and Brother Ben X, if you all go and follow him on Instagram, young dude, you know, that Minister Farrakhan has placed enough faith in to have him do this huge buy property movement. It's called the Hereafter Farms. If you want to go and follow them on IG, they're buying the land and they're selling acres at a time to Black people, and they're not requiring that you be a member of Islam. You can be of any descendancy as Black people who want to work together. They're getting ready to buy a gas station. They are doing what we rarely talk about, that conversations, Bishop, that you know we don't even talk about in the church.
And how many Black churches we got in our neighborhoods?
So one in every corner.
You know,
Yeah.
a few years ago, the state stopped allowing churches to open up in Mount Vernon because they had more churches in the whole state or maybe the nation per capita than, and it's such a small tract of land, Mount Vernon. But here at the farms, they're a good model. And guess what? They're also putting their model out there for us to replicate because they know everybody's not going to come and do partner with them. But imagine if there were 100 hereafters throughout this country, or even in the map that just in that area that brother King here and brother Blow have mapped out for us to remigrate. If that happened all across the South, if we work together to build our economy together, oh my goodness, you're right. Both
Well,
the
it's
Democrats
happening.
and the Republicans will be running to us.
But the thing is, it is happening. It kind of goes to what I was talking about before when I say, if we build it, they will come. Like we have to set an example, and you just named several examples where many people are following behind them. So I mean, when we talked about the whole patience thing and the commitment, I think it's just staying committed to it and having that patience, because as long as we stay on task, we're gonna get there. You know what I'm saying? We're gonna get there. As far as the I just gotta say, like when it comes to just the overall state of affairs of the Black community, which is pretty much like the topic that we're talking here, I think that in order to get out of this mess that we're in, it's going to take an economic plan. It's going to take politics of economics, period. And I see two aspects of it. One is Black people, we need to practice group economics within our own community, amongst ourselves, building our own. That is the only way in order to build political power. That is something that we must do. But I also think this is multifaceted. I think that while we are doing that, remember, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. While we are doing that, I think we need to also engage in a multiracial coalition that is centered around economics, because the state of this country right now, we're in shambles economically. That is something that everyone can pretty much relate to right now. And remember, back in 1966 or 67, when Dr. Martin Luther King, he was organizing the Poor People's March on Washington. See, that became more than a civil rights issue for Black people. You understand? When they organized the Poor People's March, that was unifying different races on one accord, taking it to this government. So I think that while we build our own economic base and political capital, we can also engage in a multiracial coalition. We don't need other groups to do for ourselves, but it doesn't hurt to navigate this political landscape in an intelligent way, because there are a lot of other people out there in this country who are suffering. There are a lot of poor whites, a lot of poor people from other groups who have been taken advantage of by the political elite out there. And
there's a reason why both Martin and Malcolm got killed when they started talking like that.
That's right. And that's also a reason why, even Bernie Sanders, look at all of the stops they pulled out just to stop Bernie. Bernie had a multicultural coalition, whether people liked him or not. You know what I'm saying? He fizzled out. I think in the end, he kind of punked out. But at the end of the day, it's these wide, multicultural, multiracial coalitions that are always centered around economics that make the widest impact. It's about the money. Y'all, it's about the money.
I agree.
And they're taking all of it.
I agree that it is an economic, political movement that we need to have. And as I get older, I'm more committed to, and I've always been, helping my own. Now listen, and I make absolutely no apologies for this, because the reason why our narrative, our issues are so often
conflated,
put on the back burners for the others' issues, or made to believe that we're in this together. I raised my children to believe and understand, because I know it's true, because I've seen it, that a white person can come out of the coal mines in Kentucky or West Virginia, dirty as he want to be. He can walk right down here to New York, clean himself up, go inside for an interview, and get the job before I do with my 1,000 degrees, because that is the reality here. And I'm talking about a poor person. So I don't have anything against other poor people, but I have everything for my people. And I just don't have the bandwidth to do a multicultural rainbow coalition. I just don't. That doesn't mean I won't support you in your efforts if I can, but I'm all about my people, and I do get frustrated. I was getting so much encouragement from your first comments, Tony, about not getting discouraged, because you know, and Bishop knows, that I'm trying to build out a network that's just for us. When I know, and I do have white colleagues and friends who would be so happy to support it or bankroll it. In fact, I have a big Hollywood person who told me if I go and tap into the church organizations that I know about, that he's ready to put me before this. I'm not interested in that. I don't mind taking his help, because he offered it freely, but I have to discern. I think somebody said that earlier. I don't know if it was the comments or one of you. I still have to discern what's best for our community. I'm not discouraged. I'm not going to stop doing it. I've been running businesses long enough to know that if you charge $1, Black people will get involved. That's why I don't give away anything free, because when you charge $1, Black people, our people, act as if it's $1,000. I love it, because they're invested by that $1. So I don't think in terms of free. You can get the following if you give it free, but I want committed people. And so I never get tired of working on behalf of our people, but I'm not at the point where I'm going to switch any of that frustration with working with our people over to other groups. I'm just not going, and primarily it will be white groups, but I have to applaud Reverend Barber, because that's exactly what he's done with the Poor People's Campaign. That's exactly what he's done. And well, that's not for me though, Tony.
No, listen, I hear you, but I just believe that having alliances in certain areas does not necessarily mean that you're relinquishing control. And I think that, you know, like I said earlier, we can multitask. I mean, in order to, we don't have to take away from what we're doing for ourselves in order to still be able to operate with a certain degree of strategy and intelligence in the political landscape that is set out before us right now. So, you know, it's not to say that, you know, I'm seeking out help from white folk, because, you know, that's not what I'm doing. But I do understand that there are things called shared interests, you know, and even if you look right now, you know, we've only been navigating this whole political landscape through Democrat and Republican channels, right? But right now, I think the Republican Party is on the more so on the right side of history in a lot of areas than the Democratic Party, you know? So, I mean, if it's time to go and vote and it's between Democrat and Republican, I'm going to vote Republican depending on what it is, you know, especially when it comes to certain, like, you know, with these mandates. You already know how I feel about the mandates and certain authoritarianistic policies. So in certain areas, I align with Republicans. Now, does that mean that I'm somehow less interested in working with my community and building up my community? No. It just knows that I know where my interests are, and I know who is in step with those interests at the time when I need them. So that's all. I just don't. I try to extract all emotion from it. Not to say that yours is an emotional position, but, you know, I just think that we have to be strategic in the things that we do. You know,
but if it's only going to help me, I'm sorry, Bishop. If it's only going to help me or my family or the sphere of influence that I have, and not the whole, you know, I live in a community of 55,000 people, and the majority of them are Blacks and Latinos. You know, I don't exclude them. If only Deborah is being recognized, That's another reason I don't wear a collar, because I want to see how cops treat me when they think I'm just my neighbor. And the same thing with these strategies. If that strategy only includes me being the mouth, the poster child for whatever it is, that's not good enough for me. I need to see the lives of my people changed along with me. So if that's what you're talking about, and they want to stay on the outside, but they see the injustice that has been suffered by my people, and they feel like that there's a step that they can take out of it, fine. But I'm not willing to offer any of my bandwidth to a multicultural coalition. Now, in terms of voting, I'm from this day forward, I am voting the way I feel comfortable in general elections. I remain a Democrat because I do want to have a say. And this is New York City, it's Democrat, So that's my strategy right there. That's my strategy. But in terms of building our community, we can't say we want to build the Black community and then want to stretch all the way out. I can't. That's my.
So let me ask you then, maybe. So if there is a multiracial coalition that is centered around student loans, right, and getting rid of student loans, would you not join in with that coalition because white people are involved in it?
No, this is not about being against white people. It's about being for Black people.
No. But I understand what you're saying. But I'm saying to be involved with that, which is something that benefits you and benefits your community. Does it take away from community building that you're engaging with?
Oh, yeah, because I live in a predominantly Black and Latino community.
Right, but it's not just your immediate local community. I mean, it's Black
our
people.
Community.
Yeah.
So here's my question to you. How many of those that you would build this coalition with, whites that is, would be willing to come into the South Bronx with me? Not just for photo ops, but because they want to roll up their sleeves and do the work alongside me in this coalition without fearing for their lives, being hit in a drive-by or something. Because
but you set the terms. You see, listen, I that's what I spoke of strategy. I talk about setting the terms of how certain alliances are made. I'm just saying that if you have an ally on a certain issue or someone that has a shared interest as you, why would we not take advantage of that if it is not to the detriment of what we are trying to do for ourselves? I understand the history of this. I understand how a lot of times when white people get involved with stuff, especially politically with Black people, they try to co-opt it and take it over and all of that. But that's been largely because we have been approaching this through the avenues that they provide us. That's why I never divorce this from us building our own community building, institution building, so that we do not need. See, alliances work a whole lot better when you don't really need the other side that much. But when you desperately need them, as Black people have always approached politics by hanging on to the teeth of white liberals, that's when you get taken advantage of. That's when everything gets co-opted. But that's why I'm saying you can never divorce it from us doing what we need to do for ourselves. Because didn't Barack Obama, that a lot of Black people, didn't he say even enemies have to talk? Even enemies talk, right? So,
but if we're
all about strategy for me.
But if we're centering the strategy around economics, yes, and you're saying that we should build until we don't need them, but it's more of an option, why do we need that option if we've built it to the point where we're sustaining ourselves?
Okay, well, maybe I can give an example. Let's say I'm starting a family business, right? I'm starting a family business with my family. We're all putting our money together, and we're building an empire. We built a franchise. We got 5 locations, 10 locations. Man, we are doing the thing, right? And then there's just some other group out there who kind of came from similar background where we are, whatever it is, but they're trying to fight the government for something that will still benefit me and my larger community, some economic policy. Well, I like to default to the student loan stuff because that impacts Black people more than other people. But if we know that they also have that shared interest, would we not show up for that cause because they're involved in it?
Oh, no, of course not. Of course not.
Right.
No, but you sound like you want to actually build something alongside them, and let's put the points down together. I'm saying I want to talk to those who are not flattened by the definition Robert gave in his
Right. Then
news
we talk
article.
to those people. Right. I'm not even saying that we go out looking for this. I'm just saying that participating in a common interest goal is what needs to happen, because that's what this government thrives upon. This government is this government is predatory towards all of its citizens. Well, the majority of its citizens, right? And we know it's more so predatory towards us. So what I'm saying is having certain alliances would not hurt Black people, as long as we understand that the number one alliance we must always be one, as Dr. Boyce Watkins always says, Black first. But that's me.
I'm gonna just say this, and I gotta go. I remember working for a civil rights organization a few years ago, and during their national convention, seeing where some of the donations were coming in from, and they came in from surprising places. They came in from surprising organizations. They came in from surprising corporations, and I was taken aback. And I asked the person who's the head of it, who I'm not going to mention, and they said, "Listen, their money spends towards our cause, just like our money spends towards our cause." So I understand what Tony's saying, and I understand what Deborah's saying. I agree with you both wholeheartedly. What I say is this: is that we do need to build coalitions when they're convenient and when they benefit us.
Right.
And we also need to make sure that we are building our own, and that
Right.
we have our own. And,
That's right.
and our coalition should not be dependent on somebody else because they have something that we desperately need and don't have.
Right.
We have to build ourselves up to the point where we have everything that we need, and our coalition or fellowship or cooperation with any other group is solely for the benefit of our groups, and is done on our terms at
exactly
all times.
Right. Maybe I didn't communicate that properly, but that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. So the slippery slope, and I think I may be familiar with that, one of the organizations, or it doesn't even have to be the same organization that the bishop is talking about, but I do know of one like that. And I watched the operations from afar. And what happens is exactly what he's saying in this article, that even though their money is just like our money, it's actually not, because it's attached to some deliverables by the people at the helm. And that's what happens. I mean, one of the biggest failures, which started out with a great idea, was Occupy Wall Street. Started out with a great idea. The failure in it was that there was no structural organization. And what I'm saying is that once you start taking a lot of money, they have to be included in your structural organization, because otherwise they're going to eventually withdraw it from you. And
we don't need it.
Right. And that's why you only take it if you don't need it.
Right.
Right. But see, what happens is, so you have a coalition, and I know you got to go, Bishop, and we're going to go too, because this is something I think we need to keep fleshing out and keep discussing. To come,
we must remain beholden to our community. That's what matters. Who you're beholden to. So
right.
It doesn't mean you're taking something from anyone in order to align interests that may benefit us. You know what's so funny? The campaign, my movie the film company that I'm doing. You see, I've been doing this fundraiser, and whenever I've done fundraisers, I understand that people have economic problems, but some of my largest supporters and contributors have been people from other racial groups.
Yeah.
And and I know, I have relationships with people that are not Black, and I do know that there are quite a few of them who are sincerely allies, right? Yeah. Does that mean that I trust them in every aspect as it pertains to the Black community? No, but I understand how interests can align for certain things, and as long as it doesn't create a conflict. Did we lose a pastor?
Oh no, I'm here. Oh, he had to leave. He has a situation at the church.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, we kind of got caught on that for so long. But at the end of the day, I'm saying Black people need to build our own economic base. That's what we really need to do. Yeah. We got to start it off locally, whatever we have to do, but we have to start building with each other, building institutions for ourselves.
Yeah, and I agree, and I hear you, and I'm telling you, I've told you many times, and it's not me being stubborn, it's me being committed to us. I want to hear, and that's why I gave that sister so much. I put up most, if not all, of her comments regarding the issue of abortion, because space has been eliminated for Black people, faithful Black people, to oppose abortion. So that's why I gave her that opportunity. I don't even know who she is, but all of her comments, I put them up there because I'm trying to build something. I'm trying to build something that is for us, and that is not for a limited number of us. And that's why this conversation needed to be had. And I don't believe we're done with it, because we've not even scratched the surface of the harm being done. Once you begin to take money, and I'm not talking about the support for your movie. Your movie deserves the support from whomever gives it. That's a little different, in my opinion, than the everyday issues that we have to deal with, because you're not going to find people. Well, you might, like the young man that we interviewed before, King Randall. He's finding a lot of support and financial support from more conservative people, and maybe even really, really right wingers, and they're white.
Yep.
And so I understand that. But what I don't understand is how we in a city like New York could be okay with a mayor opening 2 sites where drug addicted people can go and do their drugs, their crack,
and right across the street from a school, an elementary
right
school.
across the street from a school, right? And don't get me wrong, because I lived through crack. You lived. We're New Yorkers. We saw the destruction of crack in our community. But this is the only thing that they can do to mitigate. That's crazy to me. So when a young man in the South, in Georgia, I believe, right? In Georgia, a red state or purple, whatever they want to call it, is getting more support from whites to make a better life for young Black men, then in that case, Tony, I agree, because it's not just about what he wants, and he knows who he's dealing with down there in Albany, Georgia, in terms of Black people. He can beat them over the head asking for donations, and they may never give it. But if these people are trying to support him to help our young men, then Democrat, Republican should go out of
that's exactly my point. But that's
okay,
exactly
I just need you to
my
clarify,
point,
because I'm not going out looking for these coalitions.
Yeah, but we don't have to go look for it. And like that's why I said, before I prefaced this with, we have to learn how to have conversations with people that we typically don't have conversations with, or people that we've been told, are always wrong, are the bad guys. Because a lot of people have been told that we are the bad guys.
Yes.
So, so at some point we got to stop and look at the person who's telling this story.
Yeah. No, you're right.
So that's all I'm saying, because we've all been bamboozled in this country by the political, the whole political establishment, this government. We're all getting bamboozled in different respects. So if we can all face the fact that we've all been lied to, I think that's a good place to start. And it's a good place to start having certain conversations, no matter where they lead. I'm just saying that while I always prioritize my community first, I also understand that sometimes things may move a little faster, I guess, if you also have allegiances, or alliances from other people, like in the case of King Randall. And he has a lot of support from diverse groups, all walks of life, and there's no strings attached, and that's what I like about it.
That's what you need. No strings attached. Just
because he sets the terms, and that's why I say Black people, we need to set the terms, but we're not able to set the terms when we're always at the mercy of the Democratic Party and white liberals and the political elite we're always waiting for some type of handout. So that's what I'm talking about. And also, assistance doesn't always come in the form of money. I'm not even talking about money. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
So, but we're so programmed to see coalitions as monetary. Everything is funding. And that's the big problem with the whole political process, that it's infused with money, too much money, and that's what corrupts people and their goals.
No, you're right. I mean, I feel like I have a benefit having been raised in the South, deep South, and then having finished being raised up here and working up here all my life. I'll tell this little story and we can wrap it up and meet again in the new year to do these. I have some property down in Mississippi. Everybody knows how racist Mississippi is, blah, 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 blue, blue, blue. The whole nation is racist. I usually, for those of you who don't know me, I typically wear box braids. That's what I wear. And of course, to Southerners, especially white Southerners, a sister coming down there in braids, she seems radical. She might be getting ready to stir stuff up from our good Negroes down here. And I was working with the municipality down there to get some land and everything. So this second trip where I was meeting with the county executives, it was several counties, I had my natural, I mean, this is really curly, but I had a series, it was just so hot. And so there were, sisters understand, I had a whole lot of frizz going on, and I couldn't really manage it. And so I'm driving 2 hours from Memphis to get there. And when I got there, the person, my key person looked at me like, where are your braids? I need that radical you, right? But actually my natural me resonated with them. And so to your point, Tony, every contract that needed to be signed and notarized was done like this, because I believe had I come, and it wasn't intentional at all, it was just what happened in the frizz, right? Had I gone with the radical look that I often wear, and I don't think box braids is radical. It's just
that's not saying radical. That's radical.
That's how they think, right? That's how they see it. I don't think I would have gotten it as easy as I did, and then with the promise of additional land on top of that. And these are all white leaders in that county. So I understand where you may need them to help move your projects along. All I'm saying is that I'm for us first, and us strategizing, mapping out what our objectives are. And then if the time arises that we want to expand and bring others in because they may have something that we need, that's fine with me.
But we don't need to bring others in. I'm not even talking about bringing others in. I'm not bringing anybody into our house, our business.
It's just when you said multicultural coalition, that's
something additional. I'm saying we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Our business is our business.
Okay.
I'm just saying that we have multiple interests, and there are things that there are multiple interests that we share with other members of this society.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
All right.
See, Black people, remember, we're not one-dimensional. We're not a monolith. We don't just have a one-track mind. And I think, if we truly believe that we have this diversity of thought and ideology and all of those things, then we can understand how we're not just a one-trick pony. That's all I'm saying. We always seem to think that we only got to do one thing and that's it. Stick to that. Just like even when it comes to our leaders, our entertainers, this guy's the one that's on top for now, and then the next one got to wait their turn. Like, nah, Black people, man, listen, Black people, we need to just take over and do what we want to do. That's
what I'm about. Let's do that. I want to thank everybody for being with us for 2 hours. I always plan for 1 hour, but sometimes the conversations go longer. Mm-hmm. This is our last show for the year. I'm hoping to do the first show January 11th, and hopefully with Dr. Celicia Thompson. That was a really good show. The plan is for us both to talk about our books and some of the things that we're both experiencing as we're trying to grow and help our own, and what Leilani had asked earlier to Tony was, when you're trying to work on behalf of the community, but you're met with crab in the barrel, and that does happen. I've seen influencers bring on other influencers instead of people who are working on the ground like you and I, Tony, to promote these people who are already millionaires. It just doesn't make sense to me. And so that again speaks to the danger, I would say, the danger of this political Black elite. And so we're going to be discussing these hard-hitting topics more in 2022, but I want to turn mine into more of a action piece than I've been doing. I want to expand how I serve the community. So I don't want to just stay in my Northeast Bronx area. I want to go back down to the South Bronx where I was raised, and to East Harlem and West Harlem, maybe like the Polo Grounds and parts of Brooklyn that you would tell me. The need is to work with the people who are already on the ground to strengthen their work, and I think that's where we start, by helping those who are already doing the work, not coming in and taking from them, but supporting them in it. And those are my goals for the 2022. And hopefully, Tony, we'll be able to collaborate as we've been doing for a very long time now.
Wow, right? Yeah, I just want to say a quick little thing.
Of course.
Yeah, but I know we talked about like so many things today, but referring to the crabs in the barrel reference, I understand what it's like to really be, working hard to really get something done for either yourself and your community, and it feels like other people, they're just not supportive of you. And we know what crabs in the barrel syndrome is. But I've also seen from a lot of the Black Boule class, I have also seen a lot of them pushing a narrative of crabs in the barrel that is targeted towards the wider Black community for criticizing them, for rightfully criticizing them. And unfortunately, a lot of times these people, they have the advantage of setting certain narratives.
Yeah.
So I think we have a responsibility as those who are not a part of the Black political class to use more discernment when engaging with our own community here on the ground, because quite often what these people are talking about is far detached. It's far removed from what's really going on in our communities. Yeah. And if you see that type of crabs in the barrel behavior, that's coming from a certain type of segment.
Right.
And rather than focus on that, why not try to align yourself with like-minded people? Seek out the people who have the similar interests as you and who have the same goals and objectives of doing better for the community. Because unfortunately, Black people have always been culturally and societally castigated and labeled. And we have to be careful not to engage in that behavior ourselves. Because remember, like we said, there's a whole lot of us out here who are not represented. So we are overrepresented in criminality. We're overrepresented in indecency.
Mm-hmm.
So we just have to be careful not to engage in that same anti-Black rhetoric that so many other people have imposed upon us.
I agree with you. But see, she's a young woman, right? And which means that we need to mentor younger people, those of us who are not pushing that narrative, and try to redirect their thoughts, the younger people's thoughts. But you know what? The young people are not like us. They just do what they want to do. They're not waiting for us. I really applaud them for that. Not when it's destructive. I don't want them to get in trouble, but they're not waiting for permission. We're in that generation that we waited for permission, thinking that the baby boomers were going to move over, that they were going to mentor us and let us move in, but that didn't happen. So we're Generation X trying to still achieve when we should have been able to maybe 15, 20 years ago. So we want to stop that bleeding from trickling down to these young people and show them that there are those who support them and that they don't have to sound like us. They don't
feel that support. They don't.
And that's why they just go on and do what they want to do. And I can't blame them, because otherwise they're going to get stuck. Yeah. So we have a lot of work to do, community. Black Talk platform community. We have a lot of work to do. I'm willing to work with anybody who shares the vision for building our community and building our people. And we do have to tackle how we harm each other as well. And a big part of that harm, we spent a lot of time on tonight, the abortion rate. So I thank my sister and my brother for bringing it to light here on Black Talk platform. We'll do it again where the conversation is only about that in 2022. For now, everybody be blessed throughout the rest of the year, and I hope to see you back here in the new year if God spares life. God bless you all. Have a good night. Tony, I'll see you in the back stage.